usual, we've just got more than we can hardly cram in, so I'm going to go quickly. We're going to talk about Tyranny the Big Picture, and one of the reasons I want to talk about that constantly, I'm going to keep you updated, because each one of us needs to know how our activism in our piece of the picture fits in with the big picture, number one. And number two, look at what I'm saying. Look at this screen right now. Come on, guys. Pay attention. These are the tyrannies I went over. Here is the date. I did it on May 28. I apologize. The whole show didn't go up, so I've uploaded it. I've put all the links in. You'll have the complete show. Send the show link out, because this is how we magnify our efforts for everybody. You know, we're Monsanto's working on the food, and chemtrails people are working on the water and on our air, and there's security issues and money issues and presidential dictatorship issues. And so as each one of these efforts gain steam, let's get them to join with us, because that way we can save our homes, save our food, save our water, save our security, save our money, save our liberty. So this is a way and a technique to magnify our efforts, because there's other activists. Listen, I went to the Monsanto. You probably did too. The march off. We had hundreds of people there. I'm telling you, most of them didn't even understand that foreclosures are fraudulent. They didn't even understand that we've got chemtrail issues. They would be highly likely to get involved and support our efforts as we fight fraud closure. So this is what we're doing today. We're going to be talking about, real quickly, I'm zipping through and I'm doing it first. People say, no, don't do that first. I got to do it first, guys. We got to keep up to date. If you're not up to date every day, you're behind. That is the answer. So China gets our weapons. Duh. Come on, this is not... probably they'll blame somebody, but I swear it's our government doing this. Monsanto blowback and payoffs. There's money and lender fiascos, and then there's fighting back. And this is the people that we can connect with. We've got a great foreclosure fighter story. So I'm going to zip through these issues, but the very first thing you need to see, just a minute of this, is the sheriffs are meeting. They're meeting tomorrow and Saturday, May 31st and June 1st, and it's a constitutional take back our country from our sheriffs. So if your sheriff isn't joining this effort, get them to join, because I'm telling you, this is about the last leg we've got to stand on.
I will not sit by and watch my country die or be killed or murdered from a bunch of vapid politicians in Washington, D.C. who think that their careers and agendas and selfish politics is more important than American ideals and freedom.
He said it best. You got it. They've got tons of YouTubes there that you can watch. Please do so. Please get yourself aware of what's happening. Here is their web link. This is the convention. They're having it Friday and Saturday. If you can go, if you're in Missouri, if you're close, please drive over. See if you can join. Connect with these sheriffs. Give them encouragement. Remember, that's one of the things we can do, is encourage everybody we see fighting back on every aspect, and get them involved in your fight. Come on, let's get the activists, let's get all of our activism to address all of the issues. That's how we all magnify our efforts. All right, here's the link for the Chinese stole our newest weapons. Now these days, I just read, oh gee, the New World Order folks who have their claws and grip on everyone in the major people in the governments of all the country. They've just given China the weapons. How are they going to keep a war going if we're that far ahead? If we're 25 years ahead of China, they don't have a chance. So I know, let's just give them the blueprints. There's my cynicism showing, and this is my personal opinion. Please research and see what you think for yourself. Okay, Monsanto, the food. Duh, unapproved Monsanto crop growing in Oregon. Well, duh. We already know that they are trying to take over the food supply so they can control it, and they can control you and me and our lives and our well-being and of our children. We owe this to our children, if not even to ourselves, to fight back tooth and nail. So here's Japan cancels the order. Japan says, we don't want your GMOs. We don't want this wheat. So see, it's already disrupting the transfer of food around the planet. These are major issues. I'm just sticking these links out there and zipping through them quickly so that anyone that you bring on board with fraud closures, maybe they started with Monsanto. They're really against GMOs. Come on, there's some real effort going there. Let's snag that effort and piggyback our effort on top of it. And so, of course, here is the extensive list of politicians paid off by Monsanto. So here's the link. You can look down the list. You can see how much they've taken, and I'm telling you, they're just taking pennies. They're selling out for pennies. That's even the insult on the injury. It's injurious that they're selling out, but then they're selling out for so little. Oh my goodness. They're not even getting 100 grand. But they're accepting donations. The list goes on and on. So you can check your politicians and go lay into them. All right, fraud and corruption at the World Bank. Well, duh. We know the whole money system is fraudulent, so now we're going to talk about money real quick. These are the links that you can review yourself. I'm not going to play them. I don't have time, but you can and you should listen to the kinds of things that are being said on these videos. Many of these I've already listened to, and I already understand. It's broadened my understanding. It'll broaden yours. And you will hear ways that you can and items that you can use to interest other people into the activist movement. We all got to be activists. This whole nation, we need, at least 1 million, but 200 million people in this country be in activism. It would take a lot less than that to actually make some of the changes that we want. So this is the point. We need to find hooks, some kind of hooks to get our family, friends, and neighbors on board. Speak their language, find something they're interested in, whether it's saving the food, GMOs, chemtrails, the corruption in the money system. Pick something, because many of them will not listen to us on fraud closures. It is so ingrained that you're a deadbeat owner. If you have a foreclosure, you should lose the home, get out now. So we've got to go around in other ways to get these people. So of course she's blows the whistle, they fire her, and then of course Eric Holder arrests her. So there you go. This is the fate of whistleblowers. Anybody standing up for right and honesty right now, this is their fate, and this is what they already know is coming. So what we're seeing is that people that do blow the whistles, they've got to be really strong, and we've got to support them. So any way we can support her, let's do that. And of course, now, finally, Eric Holder's under investigation on perjury. I strongly suspect he'll get thrown under the bus. They'll put somebody else out there. Never for 1 minute think it makes a particle of difference. The agenda is the agenda, and no individual person really matters. What really matters is global totalitarianism. That is the tyranny we're facing. So it's interesting to watch these things happen and when they're going to throw Eric under the bus. But the bottom line is the next person will probably be even worse. That's the scary truth. Just a quick update on our savings. Cyprus bank deposits. Remember, Cyprus was the trial balloon. They're going to practice these theft techniques and moves. And if you don't believe me, just read the articles, just type in Cyprus and read what they've actually done over there. It's been the bail-in, they've stolen the depositors' money. Everyone took a humongous haircut. And so the fact is, what's happening? Cyprus bank deposits are plunging. No kidding. Who wants their money in that bank? They're splitting. And I thought that there's some charts. See how it's fallen off right here. And then what was really classic is this last little article here. It says, listen carefully, unless Cyprus implements some controls that work. So this is giving them a practice. They're seeing what the people do, and then they're going to come up with some controls that are going to work next time. At this pace, the entire banking system will be completely deposit-free in 1 year. And it will need to sell much more than all its gold to continue keeping the Troika happy and in compliance with the future. So we can predict there's going to be more controls in place so that once they take your money out of your deposits, you won't be able to get it back. So get it out now. Don't tell me you didn't. Don't tell me I didn't warn you. So as we read these articles, we can start to see the future because we know the agenda. That is the point. Okay, I've been talking about the crash, how it's going to go around the world. All eyes on Japan. They're headed for a crash. This is the bond's going to crash. Bank of Japan is trying to shore it up and keep it up there. And of course, this article says the dollar could be in danger of the world's currency. Not right this minute, because as people flee Japan, they come to the dollar, okay? They flee the yen, they come to the US dollar. But this article does make some very good points, and they're prepping you and me to say, oh, well, maybe we need a better world currency. Come on, we're frogs in the pot, they're turning up the heat. Pay attention. And then, of course, all the tax breaks benefit the rich. 12 trillion in the next 10 years. Give me a break. And it ain't you, and it ain't me. It's all the mega corporations that have written the laws for their benefit. So, of course, now real quickly, we're going to come into the foreclosures in our homes. So they aim for a bill to replace Fannie Freddie. We know they've been trying to do that. We know that firms are trying, they're already buying penny stock. Fannie, they're trying to buy controlling ownership so that when they can convince the government that now's the time to sell, don't you think? Then they're going to be in control of all of this inventory. And remember what I said, they have their grip on a tremendous amount of real estate and inventory and loans in this country. So what happens to Fannie and Freddie directly affects you and me and everybody facing foreclosure. So let's keep up with it. Let's pay attention to it. Let's try to read between the lines so that we can predict the future to protect both ourselves, our family, and friends. Oh, yeah, kickbacks are a normal part of business at Fannie Mae. I'm telling you, I've been saying this now for months and months and months. Fraud is the business model. It's the business model. What can I say? Look at everything. And of course they act as if this is news. Well, it's news to people that don't know it's fraud. And this is why everybody fighting every type of tyranny in this nation and the planet need to understand, probably everybody outside the US understands way better than we do, that all the loans were toxic and fraudulent. All the foreclosures are toxic and fraudulent. Fighting back to win against fraud is very tricky and difficult. And that's why most people lose. That's why it's so cool to have Pam and Karen on the show today, because they're getting some leverage. And of course, as you would expect, a former foreclosure specialist in Irvine contends in an Orange County Superior Court lawsuit that Fannie Mae fired her in 2011 for trying to expose the kickbacks. She's a whistleblower. Boom, fire these people. Boom, we hate them. Don't you tell us we're cheating. And that's exactly what everyone is going to expect and the treatment they're going to get no matter what. I did need to share with this. Obama administration extends the Making Home Affordable and the HARP program, Home Affordable Refinance Program, until 2015. So you can, believe what you want to believe about it. I do believe personally that most of it is used as a way to extend and pretend that they're going to be doing something while they shear the investor sheeple and push people out of their homes. This is a good talk piece. How many people are actually going to be able to refinance? In the end, the refinances are going to blow up, I swear. I already have seen it happen. I swear it's going to continue to happen. One of the refis that somebody sent to me just last week from Ocwen was a shared appreciation. And basically, they claim they own the note, so keep paying your loans to Ocwen. Wink, wink. Because you and I both know they don't. Of course they don't. But they're going to take the money, and they're now all overseas. They're all offshore, so they can pretty much get away with anything they want to get away with, and that is the way it's being structured right now. Sorry. However, so here's some wins, so it's not all negative. It's really, you feel like you're torn back and forth. So on February 22nd, this year, 2013, the Illinois Supreme Court adopted 3 new rules that took place in March 1st, which affect mortgage foreclosure cases. So if you're in Illinois, or if you're anyone else in any state and you're looking at what is my state doing, look at what Illinois did, figure out how they got there, see if you can replicate that in your state. This is a Supreme Court, so obviously it was a case that was taken all the way to the Supreme Court, and the new rules stem from the work of the Special Supreme Court Committee on Mortgage Foreclosures, which is composed of judges, bankers, lawyers, and other professionals that have firsthand experience dealing with the mortgage foreclosure process in Illinois. While the Illinois Supreme Court implemented many of the requirements in the rules to specifically address residential mortgage foreclosure cases and homeowners' rights, it's clear that the rules will affect all mortgage foreclosure cases. And so what they are basically saying is, when they foreclose, they have to have affidavits. Does that sound familiar? We've been pushing for affidavits of authority to file the foreclosure, and this is where they're headed. It's an affidavit that they would prove the identity of the affiant, the identity of whether the affiant is actually a custodian of the records or a person familiar with the business, identification of all records and documents, in addition to the payment history that the affiant reviewed or relied upon in drafting the affidavit, which may include records from a prior lender or servicer, identity of whether the loan was in default at the time it was transferred, identity of the computer program or software the entity relied on to track the data, that's like MERS or a MERS lookalike software, the establishment of an accurate payment history and explanation as to why the records are business records within the meaning of the law, and a specific form of notary acknowledgement. And so they determined that homeowners were, not always getting proper notice. They're being basically cheated, my words. So Illinois Supreme Court has implemented some new rules for foreclosure that the people can use. It's like a homeowner bill of rights for California that the people can use to get some redress and to get some fairness going on, if you will, my words. So this is the point. Gradually, state by state, it's only taken us 5 years. This is why we're so struggling, and so many people have already been lost. But Pam brings us some really good news. So I want to go in and show you. She's got a website. This is just a quickie little video. A lot of it's very windy. I'm just going to play 1 minute of it, a couple of minutes. And so real short, maybe 18 seconds, I forget, it's really short, to introduce herself and Karen, and then we're going to welcome her to the show so that she can explain to us about her lawsuit, about the wins, and maybe we can figure out how everybody, hopefully, can take advantage of this information. So, here they are.
I'm Raglan, and this is Karen Rosier, and we want to tell you about a huge injustice that's happening right now. If you have a house that's in foreclosure, if you've taken out any loan since 1999, if you know anybody who has, or if you've lost your home to foreclosure, you need to listen to this video because
she has a case against U.S. Bank. And so I'm going to welcome Pam to the show.
Hello, CJ.
Hi, thanks for joining us. There you are in your video. So tell us about your lawsuit. Tell us what's going on and what we can expect, what owners can expect when they're fighting back, and how should they? All those questions. Go.
Oh man, that's a lot of stuff. Well, first of all, I want to say it's really cool to be here and listen to your show, and it's really interesting how a lot of these worlds start to merge, because my case actually merges banking with Monsanto, and it's kind of interesting, so I'll tell you all about that, how that has come to happen. But basically, I don't intend to go into my whole long story, but the short of it is, in 2002, I discovered forgeries in my loan, thinking that they had just increased the points and the fees, because I had actually stopped a refi process, and it went through on its own. concerted effort to actually forge people's loans. And I've kind of always known it, but I didn't really get the whole ramification. Back then, all I thought is my points and my fees were increased. Come to find out, 5 years later, I found out that my loan was also switched. And I was offered a fixed-rate loan, but at the signing, a variable rate loan, one of the bad variable rate loans, was brought in, so I didn't find that out until 5 years later. So there's all kinds of details and things about how that happened, but I hired a handwriting expert. I went down to the bank, and after being an investigator and figuring out how on earth this loan closed without my permission, and when we reviewed my original loan file, not only were there more than a dozen forgeries in the file, but there were at least 3 different documents that had 2 different sets of information and 2 different signatures. So now what's really important about forgery is that there's different kinds of forgery. And what I've noticed is that the banks have gotten more blatant about this as I've been fighting, and I've really just barely gone public and started telling my story in January because it's been so obvious to me that I'm against U.S. Bank, that U.S. Bank has absolutely no intent of doing the right thing, and that they'll sweep as much as they can under the rug, and that they'll try to pummel you, even if you're a single mom like me or someone like Karen. So, you know, what happened was my forgery was what's called a good facsimile. That means that it's somebody who can sign your name. So there's 3 different kinds of forgery. There's digital, and that's where they do like Photoshop and things like that. There's tracing, where they actually kind of trace over your name. And then there's actually a real freehand forgery. So mine was a freehand forgery. Back then that means it was probably somebody like an ex-con or something like that. And see, the thing for people to know how the forgery has gotten so blatant is because forgery is a felony. So what they do when you report it is they go in and they take handwriting samples. So unless they actually find the person who did the forgery, they don't prosecute them criminally. And this is part of the problem. Because, yes, the company is liable for fraud, but what happened is, let's say that they're getting reported to the police. Unless they're finding the person who did it, or they have some kind of a whistleblower in the company, they're not prosecuting them. So there's a lot of these cases where, even like mine, back in 2002, there should have been a red flag that something else was going on, but it wasn't getting investigated. And even back then, they were only investigating cases where it was $250,000 and over, and I originally thought it was just my points and my fees. So the police never did anything, the bank never did anything, and I asked for, I started hearing about these modifications. I'm still paying my payment. I asked for a modification. And finally someone called me back after literally months, and they said, I don't know why you're calling, you're not behind. And I said, because I shouldn't have had this loan, and I want you to fix it. So they said, okay, don't worry, don't pay your payment, we'll get it done for you, we'll get it taken care of, but it's going to be a $1,000 fee. So I say, you know what, you really shouldn't charge me the $1,000 fee because you knew my loan was forged, and I should have never had this loan in the first place.
Right.
So they say, okay, we'll go check on it. I call them the very last day that my payment's going to be late, never had a late payment, and I say, what's going on? Well, they won't waive the fee. Would you want me to ask my supervisor? I'm like, of course. Like, who'd you ask? Like somebody at the water cooler? The supervisor gets on and says, oh no, she said, we're getting hundreds of calls a day from people who say that they didn't know they had this kind of loan.
Right.
Not saying their loan was forged. And I remember thinking at the time, that's because they don't know. So here's another clue that there was like something bigger going on. But I didn't exactly know how to find these people. Like, if I would have known then how to go out and find all these people that said they didn't know they had that kind of loan, I would have been alerting them back then, but I really didn't know how to do it.
Exactly.
So, anyhow, she told me, don't pay she said, we can't collect from you. We have to investigate the forgery, da-da-da. So this goes on. Now this is important because I'm not sure if you mentioned, but I won an appeal in California. And what I find so fascinating, the decision came in on September 11th, 2012. And I'm always like amazed at the synchronicity of that date. So I really just know that there's some kind of symbolism to that.
Right.
So they're supposedly investigating the forgery, but they really never did. Meanwhile, and that was one of the things that I won in my appeal, because promising to do something and then not doing it is a thing in the law called promissory estoppel. And the appellate court gave me the right to go back and remand, which means update my complaint for promissory estoppel, which carries fraud. I mean, it carries punitive damages. So that's important because now talking about your real damages. We're talking about you could still be in your house and have punitive damages kick in, okay? So but now another important thing that they did is they refused to take my next check. Now, I had canceled my April check because they said don't pay your payment. I hadn't gone forward and canceled the other check, so the May check went out. They called and said, we're not going to take your check. And I said, well, that's okay, because you told me not to pay it. You told me you're investigating the forgery, blah, blah, blah. They look in there and they say, oh, well, we see you called in, but it's not being investigated. And I said, well, you told me you're investigating it. And after that, they put it into investigation, supposedly.
Right.
But the fact that they refused to take my check again is relevant and applies to a lot of people. Because in my case, actually, they tried to get me to say during the depositions that I requested the money back. I'm like, no, you refused to take my check. And I told my attorney at the time there's something with that check. Well, here's the deal with the check. If anybody listening, anybody you know, if they've told you that they cannot take your payment when you get behind, it doesn't even matter why. In my case, they told me not to pay it. Maybe they told you not to pay the payment. Maybe somebody just got a month behind because they couldn't afford it.
Right.
If they tell you that you have to pay the entire thing, which is what they did with me, but for whatever reason they refuse to take your money, they can't do that. That's a concept in the law called profiting from your own wrongdoing. And at that point, they are prohibited from charging you fees and foreclosing on your home because they basically put your home in foreclosure. So there's been a lot of cases, and I know, I'm sure it's probably in the millions, where let's say people got a month behind, and then the bank refused to allow them to remain a month behind, for example.
Now, Pam,
so they can charge you the late fee, but they can't refuse to take your money.
Now, Pam, just a minute. What you're saying? Profiting from own wrongdoing. Do you have any code citations, or can we get that from you?
On my site, at the redwoodvusbank.com, I have a link to my entire decision.
Okay.
So the appeal was published, which means it can be used as a precedent for other cases.
Okay.
And this is in there. There's like 6 different points that they make in my appeal.
Perfect. We'll get that on the comments. We'll put that on the comment section of this show, so everybody can just click right on it and follow these appeals, because this is it's so interesting. We're learning so much about law that I never knew. Why would I ever know this stuff? Nobody knows this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Until now, we're being forced to learn it.
Exactly. Even in getting into how it all works, like, when it first started, I remember I said to the escrow company, I get home, I find these papers in my mailbox, and I've already told the broker. I pulled the document out and didn't refuse to sign it. They made me use their mobile notary. Come to find out, the whole notary process was wrong. They had me sign at the beginning. That's incorrect. That's how they got my signature to be able to finish forging everything.
Oh, my goodness.
And so, but all these things, like, how do you know? And then, they tried to come back. The broker actually tried to come back and say it was because I was pregnant. That's why my signature looked different.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah. They'll have a lie for everything. They probably have a list of lies that you can quote. I mean, I know they have a list of answers.
They're not even the worst. I mean, I think the once you get to, like, the attorneys for U.S. Bank, they are professional liars. But so let me tell you what happened. So it goes through the whole foreclosure process. And, of course, as soon as they refuse to take my check, I get an attorney. And so I've got him. He says, okay, they'll send us a letter, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, I get a notice of foreclosure, so he starts calling and writing, and they ignore him. Finally, go to this FHA thing, and I tell them the whole story, and they're like, oh, my God. It was Daddy Savings that became U.S. Bank back then. They're terrible. You're going to have to sue. We sue. It's the first time we ever hear from them. So now, meanwhile, my house is going down in value because it was worth $647 when this all started, and now it's gone down to like, $600, and it keeps going down.
Yep.
And so we sue, and they call. They're like, "Oh my God, we've already modified our loan." And my attorney's like, "Well, how could you do that? How could you give her a loan?" They would never let me even apply for a modification. Because every time I would call, every question letter, everything, they would say, "Oh, well, we can't talk to you because that's illegal." So they never allowed me to apply for anything. They just sent it through the foreclosure process.
Right.
And then when I called and I said, is my house seriously in foreclosure? And this is a good thing to ask if you guys are doing discovery. They said, the lady in the foreclosure department went and checked, and she said, oh no, legal was supposed to set a flag in the computer that they were investigating it, and they forgot. And can't. Only legal can do that. Your attorney has to write a letter. I'm like, well, my attorney's already written letters.
Right.
But it's good to know that you do need to actually ask that question in discovery. What is the process whereby you notify people that you cannot foreclose on this home? Whether it's some of the laws that are being passed now that don't allow dual tracking, for example.
Exactly.
You want to ask that question, and you want to get your computer records also, because they did know in my file that I had reported that forgery 5 years earlier. Then they tried to blame me and say that it was my fault because I didn't turn in the form. And I'm like, you're ridiculous. Why would I spend hundreds of dollars on a handwriting expert and not turn in a form?
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, and then of course they tried to blame me for the check. And, blaming us, the victim, and I hate to even put myself in a victim because I don't want to feel powerless, but blaming us, the people that they've perpetrated their crimes on,
That's right.
is their MO. And the sooner that we just acknowledge the fact and understand it, then we can
That's right.
fight back legitimately. Because when you know that, then you must fight fire with fire. You cannot tolerate that.
Right.
And I think part of the problem of what happens is, sometimes we are way too nice. And we allow them to get away with things, and we don't call them on their stuff.
Well,
So, I'm really smart, so I sit here and I watch everything. I watch what happened in the depositions. I know where they already perjured themselves in my deposition.
right.
And trust me, that will come out in trial. My trial is scheduled for September 9th. So, meanwhile, we get a restraining order because they say, oh, no, don't worry, we're going to modify your loan. Oh, we did it. Oops, oh, no, we really didn't do it. When my attorney says, well, what are the terms? Like, how could you just give her a loan when she didn't even know what she applied for? Like, she didn't even turn any paperwork in.
That's
oh,
right.
no, wait. And then they came back and said, oh, no, sorry, we're not going to modify your loan because you don't meet the federal guidelines. So I ran for election. I was an appointed official for 8 years. I call up my friends, and I get a congressman's cell phone number. I'm like, have you guys changed some law that makes it so that you can decide that I don't qualify for a modification without my paperwork? And he's like, oh, my God, no. He put the FBI on it. Obviously, they didn't do a good enough job back then.
Of course.
This was 2008. We go ahead into court and we get a restraining order. We had a preliminary injunction and we lost because they ordered me to pay all the points, and they ordered me to pay all my back payments and fees in 20 days. So I could pay the payments but not the fees. So we had several different tactics to handle that. But I still had my restraining order, and they sold my house under the restraining order.
Oh, my goodness.
So my attorney calls up and he says, there was a stay on this house and you weren't allowed to sell it. Now, this is U.S. Bank now. I found out later on that refusing to modify the loan and the actual scheduling of the sale was all done under U.S. Bank. So it appears that as soon as U.S. Bank took over, they completely quit cooperating.
Right.
Just, probably wanted to dump my house because they knew that I had discovered my forged loan and they wanted to just make it quiet.
It's all about cover up.
I can't begin to guess their motivation, but I know it had nothing to do with anything good.
Cover up and profits.
Not only that, so I'm going and, signing my bankruptcy papers in case I have to do that. I come home a week before Christmas and there's a notice on my door.
Oh,
so
boy.
this devastates me, obviously, because I owned my house for 19 years.
Yep.
Not only that, I had equity in my house.
Right.
Here I have a forged loan. So I'm thinking, no judge in their right mind, like I should have gotten my injunction. Now I will say, that same judge today is granting preliminary injunctions, and he's citing my case. So something has changed since then, and so we should all take heart in that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I lost my house at 19 years that I bought new. That was the only house my kids ever,
Yep.
lived in. I lost my live-in nanny, who was my support because I'm a single mom and I have my own business. And not only that, it was devastating to our family.
Absolutely.
And come to find out, this is where Monsanto starts to merge in. 3 years later, after my son had issue after issue after issue. In fact, I called you today because my son had another issue at school. Thought it was going to be late. Come to find out, my son's autistic, and the shock of being kicked out of our house and forcibly evicted sent him into a tailspin that he has yet to recover from. And although he's better, and it actually led me to realize that I was helping autistic kids by accident, because he was so completely normal up until that point, they were shocked to find out that he was autistic. Like, he had a speech delay and no other issues. So that's where it starts to combine with Monsanto, because you got the GMO food and all that. So that's like a whole other story, but it's interesting how I'm involved in kind of both of these worlds now. So it's a double-edged sword, because now I find out I can help millions of autistic kids, but my son has had to suffer. and suffer a lot. And, the thing is that the banks don't care. Like, the attorneys know all this, they've done all the discovery, they know and they don't care. So there was a certain point where I was still thinking they were going to do the right thing. Like, I was thinking we go through all this discovery, we go through these hours. We had 3 days of depositions, hours and hours and hours of depositions, where they tried to grill me and say, for example, not only blame me for things, but they tried to say, and by the way, they knew about that check. My other attorney didn't know it, and I kept telling my attorney there's something about that check.
Yes.
But my new attorney knew, the appeal attorney. Another thing they tried to do was say that because I've worked at companies and I've done turnarounds for Fortune 100 companies, I should have known the customer service person couldn't promise me anything. And see, we have to be careful, because everything they try to do, if we do get to trial in these depositions, is they try to find ways to spin it. So they go in there with their list of 10 defenses, and then they try to catch you in something, because those depositions are admissible in court.
Yeah, it is truly a game. Now, I've heard over and over and over, we're all saying they don't care. I want us to start recognizing they know what they're doing, and it's intentional, and they are harassing people in order to beat them down and steal their assets. This is the point. These are psychopaths. Remember, I talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and I've got a video on it, and I'll probably show it again. I'll put the links again. But you can just type in the word psychopath on the my searchable document of all the shows, and you'll go zip right to those links and to that live stream. Because the bottom line is, like she said, those attorneys lie? Yeah, no kidding. They're psychopaths. Do you think an honest attorney could stand up there and do that? No. But psychopaths do that because that is the point. They want to manipulate other people. They want to be in charge. It doesn't even matter what level of oversight they get. So we've got them in all levels of our society. And that is how they operate, and you can't change them, and they don't care. So we need to start recognizing that all of the banks, all of the people in the decision mode, all the folks that are like those attorneys going into court and literally lying and pushing you and blaming the victim, and we are all victims, and I don't mean victims in the sense of being weak. I mean, we are strong people being victimized by these psychopaths who have literally been able to run roughshod over us in all of these areas, the chemtrails, the Monsanto. The kids are autistic. This stuff is hurting people. That's why they're having such a massive march around the planet. And in my march, I don't know if you marched against Monsanto or were able to do that, they chemtrailed it. They sprayed chemicals. And I'm looking up, taking a picture of it in my live stream, thinking and saying out loud, I wonder if they're chemtrailing every Monsanto march. They probably would. Those are the people they want to kill. So let's just coat them with heavy metals that they can breathe, and then it's going to, hurt them from the inside out. And of course, you're going to eat corn, and so then the kids become autistic. It's really, truly a massive attack, a tyrannical attack. Oh my goodness. So you have a trial coming up in September 9.
Right. Well, it's a trial September 9th, and I actually want to respond to a couple of things you said. Again, I want to reiterate. They admitted that they knew that they broke the law whenever my attorney called them. So back in the end of 2008, they were so arrogant that they didn't. I told my attorney, oh my God, they could have at least pretended like they didn't know they broke the law. And it felt so helpless then because I knew they weren't going to fix it. When they admit they break the law, they're not going to fix it. The other thing that happened in my case that we have to watch for is that I believe the sale was fixed. And I can't go into all the details of that since we have the trial coming up, but I'll just say this. My home was sold for $200,000 under market value.
Right. And
there was only one bidder. And that particular investment company happened to resell the house. And I have evidence that they already believed it was their house during the restraining order period, before the house was ever sold. And I remember remember calling my attorney and saying, "Oh my God, my home's already been sold." And he's like, "No, don't worry, there was a restraining order." And I'm like, "I'm telling you, it has." And then when it got sold to those same people, I was like, "I knew it." So the thing is that there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and because I have this website and people are giving me their information, I've had other people tell me things where there's like a vice president of the bank who arranges to get a particular bidder for a property and then takes a kickback on the property.
Oh, absolutely.
Had other people tell me things where they're working for a company where they've approved loan modifications, for example, and then they find out they didn't go through. And then they go find out that they're like a company who's servicing for a credit union.
Right.
They find out that the credit union sells the property all to this one investment company, all owned by that servicing company that was supposedly approving the modification.
Absolutely. It is just
Owners
completely...
that picked up these houses and took them.
Yeah. It's completely manipulative. It's theft. It's property theft. And this is what happens with tyranny. They break all the laws, they get away with it, and so they steal all the assets. I mean, there you go. That's it. And then and besides our homes, they're going to steal, our money. They're going to steal our freedom. They're going to, it's really tyrannical. And that's why it is so important that we get the news out and try to reach as many people as possible on as many different issues as possible so that we can speak with one collective voice.
Exactly. And see, this is why I was so outraged so Karen, as you started playing that video, what happened is, so I did get kicked, I got forcibly evicted from my house. I sued, I continued the lawsuit, I lost my summary judgment, I won my appeal. Now, in my appeal, they granted, and I'm going to go back to Karen in a second, they granted me intentional infliction of emotional distress. The ability to sue for that. That's big in a property case.
Exactly.
So what that means is that, there may be people out there who can get attorneys to represent you, who will take the case on contingency, because now, thanks to my case, see, the thing about fraud is if you go discover forgeries in your original loan, forgery is fraud. The statute of limitations on it does not start until you discover it. Right. So it varies from state to state. Like in California, it's 5 years. In some other states, it's as little as 3 years. But if you haven't even discovered it yet, it doesn't matter if you've already lost your house. You can go back, you can inspect your original loan file, and if you find, and it has to be the original, because no matter how many times I ask for all of my documents that supposedly I signed, until I went down to the bank and looked at my original file, I did not see everything. And in fact, the copies that the bank sent me were every one that was not forged.
Of course.
They actually knew which ones were forged. They seemed to pick them out.
Of
the
course.
actual company sent me a mix.
Oh my goodness.
Super important that we request that original loan file.
And you had to go down to the bank to see it?
Yes, I had to arrange with the bank. And you can request for the bank to send it to you to a local branch or whatever. But this was, they had me come down, and it was local still. So I went with my handwriting expert to the bank. They came with an officer of the bank. So at that time, an officer of the bank knew that there were all those forgeries in my file and did nothing.
And so this is another part of the game. They compartmentalize. So the officer at the bank can't do anything about it anyway. It's not his problem or job. And so we tend to think that, gee, they work at the bank, they should do something. But the whole game is to compartmentalize, segregate, only this person knows that, only that person knows this, and that way even the people in the bank can't, be very strong whistleblowers. They don't know enough. They only know the little piece that they see. And that's a technique, I swear. It's gaming theory. I've read that. So that's why I'm talking about it.
Someone's out there in the chat saying that the banks don't have the original. Perhaps some banks don't have the original, but it is correct that is then a red flag. Because then it is impossible to then prove that is the one that you signed. When you get a good handwriting expert, they can tell the difference, and sometimes you do have to bring in a good handwriting expert. It just so happens that the person that I hired, and this was a fluke, but I don't really believe there's such a thing as a fluke. It just so happens that the person that I hired was the handwriting expert to the majority of the police departments in my area. So although I'm sure that U.S. Bank would try to discredit this person, they're going to be unable to. Seasoned, experienced, expert witness, and he did his affidavit that he reviewed my file and what he found in there.
That's great. Did you take pictures of the documents when you were there? Did they let you take copies or anything?
The newspaper took, I don't know if I've taken pictures or not. I mean, I sure could. I know the newspaper is going to do a story and made a local paper, and then suddenly that fell off the calendar.
Yep.
I know why.
Yep.
Then I was actually on CBS News Nationwide in February. They were going to do a story on me, then all of a sudden U.S. Bank is advertising on KCAL, which is owned by CBS.
Yep.
So one of the things that I think is so important about these kind of shows is it's another way to get the word out when the mainstream media is blocked.
Well, and the mainstream media is bought off. And as we talked about last week, and that was a shock to me, that 6 companies control 90% of the media. And we saw from the KGB video, remember the KGB guy that came over from Russia for asylum in the United States in 1985? I showed that video on May 28th, the May 28th show with actually I said 8 tyrannies. It's actually 9 because the presidential dictatorial tyranny is, number 1, and it's going to absorb all the others. That would make logical sense. But nevertheless, he's telling us how they did this and that it's a 30-year brainwashing program. And that's what we're suffering with. And so to reverse that would take another 15 to 30 years. This is why we're struggling.
So let me tell you about that, because I also happen to be a change agent, and I'm an expert in this. So that was my job. I transformed companies. I created all the methods for one of the top 4 consulting companies in the world. I'm one of the leading authorities in the world on change. I actually wrote a book about it. And here's one of the things that happens. See, we start to get groupthink. So what happens is, this is how it works. And you'll notice it with the gas prices, perfect example.
Yes.
Something gets a trial balloon out there, and everyone's like, oh my God, that's horrible, that's terrible, blah, blah, blah. The media reports it. The gas prices are up to $4 a gallon, whatever, in the United States. And then they back off.
Yes.
And then they kind of go back down. And then it gets quiet.
Yeah.
And then they try it again.
Exactly.
You see, is there as much noise?
Exactly.
What happens is, as soon as we stop making the noise, that's when they're able to get in and start doing it.
And jack it up again. That's so right.
We have to remember that goes for everything. Whether it's the way that things are done in companies. I mean, I've talked to people who work in these mortgage companies, and they're like, oh yeah, we used to forge things all the time. I'm like, do you not realize that's illegal? You can't just sign somebody's name. Like, when you're signing someone's name, you're saying, yes, I read this document and I agree. If they did not sign it, they did not read it, and they did not agree.
and that's illegal. And they go, oh really? Well, this is the, oh my God, yes. And this is why I keep calling, we're frogs in a pot. They keep slowly turning up the heat, and eventually the frog gets cooked without even noticing. The trial balloon. Oh my goodness. So do you have any quick ideas that we can use to change back, other than just constantly creating a ruckus?
Right. Well, so, okay, one of the things that I did, and one of the reasons why I won my appeal, that everybody should be doing, is in every transaction, let's say that you're in some kind of a foreclosure fight right now, you must write every single thing down. You don't have to have them giving you things in writing and corroborating what you're saying, but I keep a notebook, and so I had all my notes. So I was able to prove every conversation that I had with every person, who I spoke to, when it was, and their phone number. And that was good enough for the appeals court to believe me over U.S. Bank.
Right.
So that's important. And it's also important, I mean, I already talked about, we have to know that they're liars. I mean, really, they'll stop at nothing to try to stop this, because it's almost like they're there's a movie that's out, it's like a kid's movie I took my kids to see in December, and there was like this battle between the dark and the light, like the good guys, like Santa Claus and all this, and the bad guys, and the bad guys kind of were in this hole, and they were clawing their way out. That's how I see the banks.
Yeah.
And so they'll do nothing, not just the banks, but the whole entire thing that you have so eloquently described.
Yeah, they'll stop at nothing. Yeah.
Stop it. But see, what I always believe is that the light's more powerful than the dark. And that really, that when we're coming from the right place, that is our power.
Right.
And that even though there may be battles that we lose, that in the end we win the war. Exactly. And so we can't let ourselves get into fear, but we have to just say, okay, let's get organized and fight back. One of the things I think that is a shame is that in some ways this effort has gotten very splintered. There's different people say, now you're part of the problem.
Right.
Stop.
Right.
Because if they can divide us, then they still win.
That's right.
We must be
United.
We must come together.
United.
And we must realize that it's a war that we can win. Basically, in my case, the appeals court ruled that, indeed, that there was a stay on my house, that they should not have sold it when they did. And they also gave me the ability to do what's called a private right of action, which is to sue to enforce the foreclosure laws. So that's important also, because U.S. Bank didn't try to say, oh, yeah, we didn't break all those laws. They just said, well, but you know what, you can't sue for that. And
Right.
so our appeals court said, oh, yes, she can.
Right.
So that's another precedent that's important. The fraud, the punitive damages, I told you about that, the checks. The check thing is a big one. And I really, so Karen Rosier, I know you're going to have on next, she followed my advice. She requested to see her original loan file. And shortly thereafter, U.S. Bank put a restraining order on her for workplace violence, thinking they were afraid of her.
Right.
And they ended up taking her guns. I thought that was so wrong. I came in and I testified for her, and all of a sudden, this bogus tax lien from supposedly my tax return is missing is from 2007. Now, this was just in April, guys. Why are they asking for my 2007 tax return in 2013 when that was filed with my original bankruptcy and I had to get it stamped in person?
That's weird.
And at that point, I realized, oh, wait, this is my third bogus tax lien I've had with U.S. Bank, all coinciding with when I'm winning. They have some connection.
Right.
So what we must understand is that, yes, they do have these connections. Yes, sometimes we know that the judge in Karen's case is under investigation for exchanging sexual favors for jobs. So he's under investigation for abusing his power. He's in no position to be ruling on U.S. Bank abusing their power.
Right.
I sat in the courtroom and I listened to those attorneys, and this is what I saw. I saw a bunch of babies. I saw a bunch of weak men who hide behind U.S. Bank and the law to try to bully people because they probably are the ones that got picked on the playground.
Well, and they probably profit. And I swear that they profit. They profit. I've had someone tell me, I've not been able to verify, but he says these houses, when they're foreclosed, they're given to the judges. They're given as wins, as bonuses. I need to research that some more, but it doesn't surprise me at all. And just like Pam said, so she's winning over here in this battle, and now what, the IRS, she's getting dinged from some other place that you would not think has anything to do with the foreclosure. And that's, so I immediately start to think, well, what are these recent issues? I haven't really talked about them. They're pretty much, the IRS scandal, they're targeting people, the Benghazi scandal, all these scandals, they're all connected, guys. They're all connected. It's a cartel. It's a cartel. It's the mega corporations and the heads of government and the agencies. And it's all overseen by the banksters. That is the big picture. And so we can expect, just like Pam is explaining to us, in her case, she's over here fighting on this one effort, and then she discovers, how Monsanto is playing into this, how the IRS is playing into this. Wait a minute. And that's why I'm feeling and have just become absolutely convinced that fraud closures are just one piece of the action. It's just one tip of this iceberg over here. And look at these other tips that we are seeing. Let's get all the people on every battlefront to connect together. So, because now I'm willing to fight against Monsanto. I'm willing to fight against chemtrails. Come on, are you kidding? I'm willing to support the sheriffs as they want to go back to constitutional law. And I swear they will be too. Boy, Pam, we thank you for sharing with us. We really support you in this trial. I'd like to, any other updates, please share with us about that update. Any other things that happen and occur, let us know so that we can keep on top of it with you. I'd love to be able to...
I forgot to say, is
Okay.
there one more thing I forgot to say?
Sure.
Excited out of this. I have an agent. I've told you I've written 3 books so far. I have an agent from New York, so getting published, the hardest part is actually finding an agent. He's known about my battle with U.S. Bank for 5 years now. And he's been dying to get me to do a book. And I decided, what's something that I can do? At first I was quiet, and then it really actually pissed me off whenever they were
Yes.
able to block the media. I just think that's
Yes.
wrong.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
I want to see millions of homeowners out there suing for millions. See, the thing is, they can't stop everybody from seeing your original loan file.
That's
It's
right.
really about the numbers. When you go to change something, there's two ways to do it. Top down or bottom up. Top down is having the leaders do it. That's not happening. So
Right.
that means it's got to go to the masses. And the more of us that are playing a consistent game and understanding, when you're fighting, you can use these cases as precedent. What you do is you refer to that, and
Right.
you go back to that thing as a law. That's what you
Right.
do. And so I decided I'm going to go ahead and write the book, but instead of it just being my story, I want to bring it together and have it be other people's stories also, and show not just my fraud, which was the beginning part of it, and I guess really the end part of it, and how my home was sold illegally,
Right.
but the other pieces in the middle. So I'm also looking for stories. So at that website, people can come tell me your story if you want to be in the book, and let me know. And then what'll happen is I'll interview you, and then bring out the points of the law. And I'm really good at taking these complex things and making them simple, because I think that's what people need in order
Absolutely.
to get their head around it. See,
Absolutely.
when this all first started, part of the bank's power is the fact that they're so big, nobody believes that they do that. So
Exactly.
that's actually been part of their strength. So you have
Yeah.
to show a really clear and compelling, evidence to the public to go, oh my God, this is really happening.
Right.
And you do that by making the story simple. So I'm actually really good at that. So I like to bring together, like different representations of basically the three main legs of fraud. Originating the loan, servicing, and all the MER stuff and the securities, which I don't really know a lot about, to be honest with you. And then the end part of it in the foreclosing and the robo-signing and all that. And just kind of, and I know that there's a bigger picture than that, but to kind of step the American or the really world public through
Yes.
how this stuff has happened. So
Yes.
that's kind of my next step. I'm going to get that out there, and I'm talking to my agent about that. But I really like to release it like initially, get some copies of it out there so that there's no way to stop it, because the actual
Yes.
publishing process takes about 8 months, and even if they speed it up, I don't want something to happen in between them that it can't get out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Just self-publish if you can. This is truly something that is affecting a big enough segment of society that if we could tap into the connection there, then truly we're talking 12, 20 million people that have either been personally directly affected with foreclosure and loss of their home, are currently in that pipeline of home loss, or have family, friends, neighbors that are, or those that are so underwater, they're actually asking me questions like, okay, if I don't think I can make any more loan payments, what's that going to look like? There are all these underwater people. It's because it's a theft program. They've planned this. That's why they ballooned it. That's why they wrote the toxic loans. That's why they're forging signatures. Are you kidding me? Because everything they do, and why they don't even mind admitting that they're cheating, because they know they're getting away with it, and they've been getting away with it. That's why I've been trying to get somebody to prosecute them criminally, and it just feels like it's
Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me that. I also have a change.org petition at my site, and the change.org petition is a request, and it was funny, I did it before the protest last week, I didn't even know, but I just got tired of it. It's like, see, what I do is, and I think this is what I encourage for everybody to do, you do something like every week. You are a pain in the ass and you don't go away. You file a complaint with your attorney general, you file a complaint with the DA, you go to the Consumer Protection Bureau, when they tell you that the bank says they didn't do it, you protest that, and you ask them to go review it, and then a human being actually reviews it. You just keep going and going and going, and you don't stop. That's what you have to do.
Right.
Because that's what they do.
right. We've got to be little,
Anyway,
we got to be Energizer bunnies.
So it's out there.
Maybe I should have the Energizer Bunny as our theme. Boom, 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 boom. We just keep going.
That's kind of what it is. And you know what? This isn't my job. Like, this is,
I know.
When people come to my site, I mean, maybe we'll donate thing on there, but I have them for free. You get information for free. I tell you what to do. I tell you what I know.
Absolutely.
This isn't my job, so obviously I have to temper the time that I spend in it.
Absolutely.
But we can all kind of just like do a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. Some of us have to do more because we're, depending upon where we are in our battle. But things like the change.org petition, that's an easy thing to do. It's free. We can pass it around to our friends. And
Right.
it basically says, listen, if the banks have committed a crime, they should go to trial.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. And truly, like she says, every little bit does help. Sometimes it feels like it's almost a waste of effort because you don't see immediate change, but what you're doing is filling the black hole with more and more and more demand for change, and at some point that's going to start bearing some fruit, planting seeds. Thank you so much for sharing, Pam. We really appreciate it. And I think Karen's joined
welcome.
us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks. And we look forward to updates too. Karen, I think you've joined us. Are you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here live.
Yes, you're live on the air. Share with us your viewpoint and your input.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me, but I thought the show ended at 11, so we should be off now, right?
Oh, no, it just goes until we're done. Don't worry about that.
Oh, God, see, that was part of my strategy to let Pam talk, because I love listening to her, and I figured, she'd talk and we'd run out of time, and I wouldn't have to.
Well, you don't have to speak very long, but often our shows do run a little long. There's just an internet show, and so we just plug it up there. We post whatever it is, because truly everything that's being done on this show is of vital importance. Some of you may not be interested. Some of you are interested more in one thing than the other, but the whole point is that we have to save ourselves, and it has to be grassroots. So please share with us what your experiences have been.
Okay, great. Because when you said Karen's winning in Orange County, I looked at my husband and said, wow, this is what winning feels like? Okay, now we've been in this fight since December 2007.
Wow.
And it actually probably started December 2005 when I took my note out, but I just didn't realize it.
Right.
When I go to court, I'm in Orange County, California, and if you don't know, when I first moved here, literally friends of mine who I consider them part of the Aryan nation, they told me, hey, Karen, be safe. Orange County is the last safe place in America to be a white person. And, the FBI and the Orange County Council of Human Relations, they document all of these crimes against black people. And I bring that up because it goes to the changing the court's mindset about what a deadbeat is.
Right.
So, of course, when I show up in court, the lawyers, their whole strategy is, hey, Your Honor, just keep pointing at me and my husband and saying, hey, she's a deadbeat, she's a deadbeat. And you know they're trying to even use the racial thing against me.
Absolutely.
And they'll start off with, she got a $576,000 loan, and look at them. They're not trying to pay their loan. They're deadbeats.
Exactly.
And that's when I say, oh, wow, deadbeat. Let's tell the truth, Your Honor. When I took out my loan back in 2005, I was working with a company called WMC Mortgage. And they're one of the first companies that the government shut down as one of the worst subprime lenders in the history of America.
Right.
And when I took out my loan in December 2005, I signed all the paperwork, and I didn't realize they were, putting me in a predatory loan, even though they documented my income. At the time, my income was documented. They pulled all of my bank statements, and that's what I told the judges. That mine was not a liar loan. They pulled all of my bank statements, and my bank statements showed that I was putting in $23,400 every month on average into my account.
Right.
And I was only spending $7,000, a little over $7,100 every month on my bills.
Right.
There was no shortage of me being able to afford the loan.
Exactly.
They didn't just look at my bank statements. They actually called my clients to make sure that I had an income stream because they didn't even believe the bank statements.
Oh, my God.
You made a comment earlier about the banks not giving you your money. I was working with Washington Mutual at the time, and there were days, one day I'd go in and put money in, and I'd come back the next day, and they wouldn't give me my money back. And Wells Fargo would tell me, oh, we put a hold on your cash. And I said, no, you know what? I need you to go right now and pull all of my cash out of your account and count it for me right here in front of me. And I did that, and they wrote me back and told me I had to close my account down because I didn't, play fair. So I closed them down in Washington Mutual. Me and the president of that company, Kerry Killinger, we had a couple of discussions back, and he's one of the first people that the government took his bank from him. That's now Chase Bank. So we're at 2006. I tell them, hey, you guys are a bunch of criminals. February 2006, and I rescinded my loan. And the paperwork is very clear. I even told them there was a problem with life. And at this point, when I'm talking to the judge, I point out to the judge, it's like, who I am is, you guys want to say I'm a deadbeat, but I started college when I was 10 years old. I have a degree in electrical engineering from Carnegie Mellon University. I have a master's of science in computer integrated manufacturing, industrial administration, also from Carnegie Mellon University, and an MBA. I have a master's in public administration from Harvard University, the first black female in their doctoral program in science, technology, and public policy, and they paid me $1,000 a month plus full tuition to attend. So
Wow.
now all of a sudden, Your Honor, I'm not this deadbeat that they
Right.
want you to believe I am. And the lawyer's like, oh, wow, well, we had no idea who you are. I'm not. It's in the file.
Oh my goodness.
It's even in my declarations when I even say who I am. So
Right.
how are you pretending you don't know who I am?
Exactly.
So exactly. So at this point,
Yes.
I'm like, Your Honor, I told them there was a problem in LIBOR in 2006, and here, like Pam said, your notes. Here are my handwritten notes, and here are the letters that I told them that I ran simulations. And oh, by the way, if you look at my transcript, you will see that I have enough accounting courses behind me that I actually was offered a job teaching undergraduate accounting. But that's not what I wanted to do. And the judges, they still don't get it. So I said, now I rescinded this loan, and then we took out a new loan in March, and then I rescinded that loan because they didn't do something right. And then I hired a lawyer after about the third go-round, and then finally we signed a new note June 1st. And whoever's out there that's into superstition or religion or doctrine, the note closed on June 6, 2006. 666. So, of course, yeah, my sister's a reverend and long line of reverends in my family, and they all told me I was going to have problems with this note, but I'm a scientist, so I didn't believe them.
Right.
Right. So the note closes June 6, 2006. Then I get a letter a few months. First, I get a letter from Litton Loans telling me that I was delinquent on my December 2005 loan. And I write them back, or rather, I have my lawyer at the time write them back, and she tells them, hey, that loan was rescinded. Karen took out a new loan on June 1st, 2006. You guys have the wrong loan. You need to correct the paperwork.
Right.
So we get a update loan back. Oh, everything's been corrected.
Right.
In September, I get something from DMAC, and they say, we're servicing your loan, and send us all your payments. And so I just assume that the paperwork is correct.
Right.
I tell the judges, and I say, every time you meet a judge, you have to assume they haven't read your pleadings. And sometimes I will ask them, have you read my pleadings? And if some of them will get insulted, sometimes I will read my pleadings to them. Because you have to assume they haven't read them. And if they say they have read them, I will say, well, then if you read my pleadings, then you understand what I said on page 7 when I said this, just to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Good for you.
Well, you have to do that. And
Yes.
so I go in there and I say, well, I just assumed that they had the right loan because it never dawned on me. My mother works for DMAC as a factory line worker in the 70s. And my older brother, spent 25 years working for GMAC Finance as a clerk and recently retired. And I actually worked for GM Hughes Electronics. So I just assumed that GMAC knew what they were doing.
Right.
And I was paying my note. So now I said, Your Honor, now let's get to the actual default. Let's get to what happened that made Karen default. And I tell people all the time, I'm not giving legal advice because I'm not a lawyer. You'll hear all of my background. You will not see law degree. You will not hear legal law case, none of that. Paralegal, that's not me. So why did Karen default if Karen was making $23,000 a month and had all of this stuff going on, right?
Right.
Well, Your Honor, Karen was down in Mexico having a good time, living on a golf course on a private beach, playing golf, and trying to save the world. We literally had this idea that we were going to train all of these fishermen on how to build houses because we had all of these Americans that wanted to live on the golf course, and rather than bring down workers from America, let's train these Mexicans on how to build the correct way, and that way American retirees, which is primarily the market can afford to buy really nice houses. The fishermen can get skills and get jobs. And so we had this plan together, and I was negotiating, a land deal about $10,385,000. That was the amount of the loan that this bank in Germany was supposed to give me.
Yeah.
And we had all the letters of credit and all the approvals. And I come to America December 4th, 2007, and all my payment wasn't made out of my account. So I called GMAC, and I say, well, what's going on? And Latina Don told me, we can't talk to you because you're current on your mortgage. And I said, look, that makes no sense. If I'm paying my mortgage, clearly I am paying your salary. You should want to talk to me. Makes sense, right?
Exactly.
Refuse to talk to me.
Yes.
So, and I'm like, in some respects, most people, life happens. Our son is very, very healthy. If you've seen the video, that's the tall boy that's standing behind us. When he was born, he was 1.5 pounds, the smallest baby in Orange County, and he used to fit in our hands.
Wow.
He had a whole bunch of health problems, and one of them is that he has a brain shunt. And when they put the brain shunt in, they told us it was going to continue to fail, but we beat the odds, and he lived long. He's still here, still has the
Great.
original shunt that they put in when he was 4 months old. It shot up to over 5 feet tall and literally outgrew his shunt before it failed.
Wow.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But he had to go get a new shunt tube put in his brain, which goes down to his stomach, and he had complications. And medical problems are the number one reason why
Yep.
people go into bankruptcy.
That's right.
I get very passionate about. I'm a capitalist to the heart.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to go on shows like this because I understand there's so many people out here that believe in that are against capitalism, but I'm a capitalist to the heart. But when you are in Ronald McDonald House, or when you're at a children's hospital, and when you're with parents who are holding their sick child or who are worried about their parent and have to decide between whether to feed someone or whether to be there with a dying child or a dying sick person, you can't have a heart or a soul and not feel for that person.
Exactly.
I mean, you can't say, well, I have mine, but so what? Because that person loves their child or their parent just as much,
Absolutely.
maybe even more.
Yeah.
Someone who's as strong as me, because I have skills and I have, my son ran up $1 million worth of medical bills his first 108 days.
Oh my
I
goodness.
paid $700 out of pocket.
Right.
Why? Because the Navy valued me so much that I had such great insurance that they paid all of his bills except for my $700 deductible.
Right.
He had the best brain surgeons, the best heart surgeons, the best lung surgeons, so he still has the best eye surgeons. Guy works on Navy good ship. So, I see how they treat me, but I'm here with parents who are literally holding their child and trying to decide, should I go to work to feed my other 4 children, or should I be here for that last hour with that dying child? And no parent should have to decide that. So
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah.
So I'm here, and we fell a little behind, 30 days behind, no problem. So
Right.
I say, hey, now you guys will talk to me. So I call them up, hey, what's the problem? Why are you not taking the money out of my bank account? At this point, I'm with Citibank. Why is my automatic payment not being made?
Really?
Oh, yeah, well, we can't figure that out, but you're not 90 days behind, so, don't worry about it, don't talk to us. So, no, I'm not going to go 90 days behind. The next day, I get a notice of default, the election to bid. So, at this point, I'm 34 days late.
So they stopped taking the automatic payment.
They stopped taking the automatic payment. There was a problem with the bank. There was a lot of things going on.
Oh my goodness. Forcing you into foreclosure. Classic.
So then they send me, I'm 34 days behind, and they send me the nod, right?
Oh my goodness.
Because, and I tell people, look at everything with a fine-tooth comb, and then look at it twice, because I didn't get it the first 3 times I got it. I read it, and eventually it said, well, here's the problem. They said I'm in default on this December 2005 note that I rescinded.
Right.
That's not my note. They have the wrong note. And so
Right.
because I'm a problem solver, it's like, ha, I'm brilliant, I'm smarter than everyone else, I figured it out. I'll call them up and they'll correct it.
Yeah. Oh.
Because yeah, the banks don't want my house, they want my money, and I have money to give them. Yeah,
Yes.
all right.
No.
So I called them up, and we're still fighting about whether or not I had the right to rescind a note back in February 2006. I'm going, excuse me, as an American, I have the right to contract with whoever the hell I want to.
Exactly.
Force me to accept a note that I didn't sign. That's just not going to happen. And that's what I told the judge yesterday.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
That's just not going to happen. So
Welcome
I'm
to
sitting
tyranny.
here at 2000, so now we're at 2008, and I'm telling them that's the wrong note. And later what I discovered is that on the front and the back of the notice of default, that they spelled MERS two different ways. So I started looking in the MERS, and I think December 2009 or so, I'm going forward. So at this point, I'm still negotiating forbearance. We go to February, and my son, the brain surgery didn't go well. He had to have a second emergency brain surgery, lapsed into a coma, almost died, had the surgery. He was up and running the next day, fine, just a remarkable child. But now I've calmed down a little bit, so I say, well, I'm going to send them my money anyway. And I tricked the system to take my, and I called them writing them QWRs, leaving, the voicemails. Nobody's returning my calls. 45 calls that I made between February 1st and March 30th, I think. I have every last one documented. So at this point, I just send them an electronic payment on February 26th or so to keep my account from going 90 days late. Because I think I don't want to go 90 days late. There's no way. And either Tina Dawn, when I talked to her, she said, well, if you send two payments and you're less than 60 days late, you'll be right back at the beginning of the queue. But if you only send one payment, then at least you won't lose your place in the queue. They really had a queue of people that they would talk to.
Oh, those liars. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I'm saying, okay, well, I'll just send them one payment that way because I don't want to lose my place in the queue. I mean, gosh, it'll be 3 months later before you talk to me. So I'll send them one payment, and I'm thinking, okay, great, this is all done. And then I get this note at the sale that they're going to sell my house.
Right.
Now in default, they're selling my house. I'm going, hey, what the heck? I sent the payment to you guys. You can't do that. And so then they send me my money back. Well, yeah. I'm like, cool, thank you. You sent me my money back, so clearly I don't owe you any money.
Right.
So I'm still saying, okay, believing that they're reasonable bankers and there's a mistake. If anybody's familiar with Lean or Six Sigma or any of the quality initiatives like home quality management, continuous measurable improvement, I'm a Six Sigma black belt on Rosier, and I used to be the Navy Six Sigma champion. So when it comes to improving processes, making them better, making them faster, making them more robust and repeatable, I'm the person that the experts come to try to improve processes.
That's
and that's not me bragging. That's literally in three different times. When I was 25, I was the first person to head up a $1 billion procurement that was not for a platform or for an aircraft or just for a piece of equipment.
Right.
And so the Navy has turned to me when they've had programs with congressional oversight that they needed problems with. So for me, it was just, I thought it was a GMAC problem.
Right.
So I said, well, we're going to go into forbearance. I obviously don't want to lose my house.
Right.
So what do we need to do? And they come up with, well, we're going to give you this forbearance agreement and, put all your payments at the end. I said, no, what do I owe you? And I think the number was like $27,400 to restate my mortgage.
Okay.
Now, GMAC today will say that, well, Karen doesn't have the money, so clearly she was a default me. And my defense is always, well, Your Honor, I don't have the money today because they owe me money. Say, but if you check my bank statements on the date that, we made the agreement,
yeah,
I had ample cash in my account to pay the $27,400.
Right.
And what the banks are saying is that, oh, you're a deadbeat today, So therefore, you were a deadbeat 5 years ago.
Yeah, any excuse will do.
Exactly. So you have to go in there and say, no, Your Honor, you're looking, the person that I am today is because of the harm that they have caused me.
That's right.
5 years ago, I was strong, I had money, I could have paid my mortgage, but because of their screw-ups,
Right.
I have no money, and they're continuing to profit, and they need
Right.
to pay me. And that's
Right.
what I tell the judges.
Right.
So this, we get to the forbearance agreement, and the big issue is that I refuse to admit default. So again, when they say default, I said, no, I was not in default. I tried to pay. You guys didn't accept it.
Exactly.
Because once you admit default, that's all the judges say is, oh, you're a deadbeat. It's like, no, there was no default. They're the ones that defaulted.
Right.
The wrong contract. They screwed up. They defaulted on their contract. Because when you sign a contract, every party, both parties have obligations.
That's right.
And they're not living up to their obligations, but they're trying to penalize you after they prevented you from living up to your part of the bargain.
Right. Profiting from their own wrongdoing. I wrote that down because it's
That's
really
what
well
Pam was
said.
saying, yeah.
That's what she said. Absolutely. And just as an aside for everybody watching and talking to your family, friends, and neighbors, and anybody, whenever you talk to anybody about foreclosures, just remember, if they tell you, particularly that they were told to stop making payments so that they could get a loan modification, that is bank wrongdoing so that they can profit from it. That's illegal. And I'm going to go after the show, get the citation, put that on our website and the comment section so that everyone can use this, because the people don't understand really that the banks are just flat lying to them. All of us now involved in this, we understand that. But notice, neither Pam nor Karen really expected this to start with. They assumed the banks were telling the truth, which is exactly what the majority of people still think. I know that. That's why we don't have outrage and we don't have a complete uprising, because people still think we're deadbeats. You know, the owner's not paying, they should lose their homes. They don't understand that it's an intentional wrongdoing by the banksters so that they can profit and steal the houses.
I have people who tell me, hey, Karen, why don't you just get a job and pay the bankers, because you can just pay it and be done with this fight and move on with your life. And I'm going, why should I? So I said, well, why would I do that? They're wrong, I'm right. And they wanted me to admit the fault. And I even think I wrote on there, I want GMAC to admit that they're a bunch of lying thieves and that they screwed up. And that's what I've been written over my contract.
I love it. I love it. And they are a bunch of lying thieves. And here's the answer. When someone says, oh, just give in, give up, pay them, move on. The answer is, if you support fraud as a business model, then there is no stopping them. If you don't stop them on this, they will take everything.
It's what I told the judge specifically yesterday. I said, Your Honor, when they said that, they were asking me to become complicit in their criminal activity.
Absolutely. You are a co-conspirator.
I will not let them make me a criminal.
Not a co-conspirator. Absolutely.
If they want to break the law, then I'm going to call them on it. I'm
Absolutely.
not going to be joining them in their crimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And every one of us needs to take that stand and commitment. We will not participate in their fraudulent business practices. And every time we come across it in any way, shape, or form, we will fight against it. And we will support those fighting against it. That's the commitment to freedom that is now the battle, basically, of a lifetime. This is a tremendous battle. We are fighting a long history of folks in charge that are trying to shift the world into totalitarianism. And the assault on this country is unprecedented, and we must stand up and fight back. We're just so thankful you're still fighting back. So you were in court yesterday?
I'm in court all the time. I was in court yesterday, Bank of America demand hearing. So now we're at March 2007, and this is where I decided I had to fight.
Yeah.
So we're the day before they tell me they're going to put it in a sale or they're going to sell my house.
Right.
And the woman's on the phone saying, you know what, we can't get the wording right on the forbearance agreement. So we're just going to send, and they literally faxed me a blank signature page because I'd marked up everything on there. It's like, I'm not signing this. And at the time, if you notice, your signature was always on the last page of the document.
Right.
It was always conveniently at your signature page. There was nothing else on that page
Exactly.
but your signature.
Exactly.
And I think, wait a minute, they're clearly changing documents here.
Exactly. Exactly.
So what? So I mark up everything. She said, "Here's a clean signature page. On the signature page, send us $27,400,
Oh, my goodness.
and we'll attach the contract to it later." And I'm laughing hysterically. I'm like, "Okay, yeah," because I fell off the turnip boat, right?
Right.
And my statement to her was, "You must be kidding. Who would do that?" And
Yeah.
she assured me that Americans were doing that.
And they are. And they are. That's what's so horrible. They are. People are getting suckered in. They don't understand the simple ways they're getting cheated. Straightforward, honest theft.
And my thought was, hey, you know what? If you guys would try something like that with me, what chance does the average person have?
Exactly.
As I am a Kennedy Fellow, I said, it is my duty not to go back and play golf and have a good time, but to speak up for everyone else.
Yeah.
So I decided, well, I'm going to take them on, but I'm going to file bankruptcy and work with the bankruptcy trustee, because this is now June 2008. So because the bankruptcy trustees, they're the good guys, and they're on our side, and the trustee is going to help us. So I filed Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Little did I know, by the time we got to September, I'm surprised I wasn't arrested, because I've been accused, many of the trustees in writing, of being either ignorant or complicit with all of the crimes that were going on against these American public.
From the comments I've had from others with the bankruptcy trustees, they are complicit. The end.
Exactly. There's one or two good judges out there. One of them was sent to France, another one, they get rid of them quick.
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking, you know what, you guys have lost your mind. They put me in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which I converted my 13 to 7, and I refused to accept the discharge. Said I'm going to sue them in California State Court. So I write, maybe it's a paragraph long. My initial complaint against GMAC and MERS was a paragraph long. And it's posted on my Giving People Power page. And it basically says, you know what, I requested judicial hearing of the proposed seizure and sale of my property, that I am the rightful owner, and I don't know who the hell these guys are. And that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it took them maybe 2 months for them to finally decide that my case was not a complex case, that it was just a basic mortgage fraud, mortgage foreclosure, and to force me to write a complaint.
Yeah.
So I accused them of everything, and at this point is where it gets interesting. So now I tell them, well, mortgage electronic registration systems is not legal in the state of California, and this is why. David, you still there?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, I'm getting a beat. Okay, so this is why they weren't legal. When California business requirements are that you have to have a registered proof of service, agent for proof of service, right?
Okay.
And you have to have a valid California corporation ID number. When MERS, which is Mortgage Electronic Registration System, Inc., applied for their business license et cetera, in California, they discovered that some enterprising person had already reserved the name. It already had a proof of service agent. And it was trying to extort like $50,000 from them at the time in order to from the name.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
rather than... Hello?
I'm here. Go ahead.
Okay. So rather than them accept pay them, they just registered they didn't register their proof of service. So when you were writing Mortgage Electronic Registration System, Inc., in California, they were Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems, Inc. That's how they were signing documents. And the reason I caught it is because when I sued them, Murray said, well, Your Honor, she got our name wrong on the paperwork. And I'm going, well, I would never make a mistake like that because I double checked it. So I looked at all of my paperwork and I said, wow, you know what? They've been signing their names 2 different ways. And I said, you know what, Your Honor? I'm not the one that's confused. They're the ones that's confused, and it was a deliberate attempt to confuse the courthouses and the recorder's office. It had nothing to do with show me the note. It had nothing to do with paragraph 24 or MERS being a beneficiary. In California, the issue was that Mortgage Electronic Registration System, Inc. was not legally registered in the state of California. And that's what I argued all the way up until December 2009. And from our original, when they kept saying, show me the note, I said, Your Honor, this is not about show me the original note. This is, and this was in federal court, I said, this is about them using counterfeit obligations and counterfeit securities. And if they're going to use counterfeit securities and obligations, then people can start paying with counterfeit money.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, man, I was still talking to Neil Garfield. He actually had me, posted me on his page, and I was cool. I was like, cool. I was like, if you're going to show me a copy of my note, then I'm going to pay you with a copy of my money.
Oh, Karen, that's so sweet.
And so what did MERS and GMAC do? They reversed and rescinded the default. So now when we get it, and the people in Florida should resonate with them. So now when we go to federal court, GMAC and MERS says, well, Your Honor, we're not trying to sell our house, and we reversed the default, so we don't even know why she's suing them. Because I've been suing them, they've never sued me. I said, we don't even know why she's suing us, Your Honor. We're not trying to foreclose on her. We have nothing to do with it. So, of course, now the case is dismissed.
Right.
And at the time, the judge writes, well, he was inclined to actually rule against me and rule with the banks because my claims were bizarre. And they were so bizarre that if they were true, they would undermine everything we knew.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Right.
I don't care.
Right.
They reversed. No problem.
Right.
So now, so I'm happy at this point. And we're running around for about a year or so. And then all of a sudden, MERS assigns interest that it doesn't have to Bank of America.
Of course. Yep.
So Bank of America enters into the picture, and they're using global signers, like Nicole Shelton, who
absolutely.
is in Pennsylvania and was stripped of her notary duties.
Yeah.
People who have been kicked out of Ohio and Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I read everything. So Google is my friend.
Yes.
Best friend, in fact.
Yes.
She really is. So at this point, Bank of America enters into the picture, and I'm going, I've never liked them anyway. So this should be fun. They decide they're going to foreclose on me. We go to court, and I get them in bankruptcy court again because I was like, well, by now the trustees have gotten a little smarter. Let's see how they do. And I've gotten a little smarter so that when I actually file my bankruptcy claim, I put my house down as an unsecured.
Absolutely.
And I put my, and judges are ruling against that now. So I put my note down as being an unsecured note. And and nobody challenges it.
Right.
Bank of America comes in and they challenge my confirmation plan. And I said, I don't even know who these people are. I said, I didn't list them as a creditor because I listed the note as unknown investor because when I first pulled my stuff off of MERS, I printed everything in a PDF because when you go back 2 days later, it's all missing.
Of
so
course.
if you see something good, you got to save it that day.
Right.
Yeah, because they won't pull it back. So the judge says, well, you know what? You're absolutely right. They have no right. They have no standing to be here. Bank of America, you guys have to get out of here. So 3 weeks later, in January or so, Bank of America puts in a proof of claim. The next day, I assault their proof of claim on the grounds that if MERS had no rights, then MERS can assign rights it didn't own to Bank of America. And California is a deed of trust state.
Exactly.
You really have to go to your deed of trust and look at every single party in there.
Right.
It's like, who was the trustee? Were they a legal entity in the state of California? On my day, Western Trust Associates was not.
Right.
Who was the lender? WMC Mortgage. Well, they were a legal GE company, so they had a right to be there. Who was the borrower? I was there, so I had a right to be there. And who was the beneficiary? Well, it was Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems, I've already proven that they were not legal on the day that I signed my deed of trust.
Right.
I don't care if they're legal today.
Right.
When I signed my contract,
They were not.
I believed I was signing it with an entity that doesn't exist.
Right.
New entity can't now come in and assume the role of an entity that didn't exist.
Exactly.
No precedence for that in California law. So what that means is, for me, there are only two parties who legally were there, and one of them was shut down by the government. But if they assign their rights to LaSalle Bank, like they claim, like Bank of America claims, there should be a record of it.
Exactly.
Now, the other part, when you're looking at your recorded documents, because this is one of the things Sam had me do. In fact, Renee is the one that made me do my audit, Renee Powers. And I started looking at all of the recorded documents. It is a company called Executive Trustee Services, who I've been suing for quite some time, which was a GMAC wholly owned subsidiary. They're supposed to be the trustee, right? And they were hiding the fact that they're a trustee. But when they were recording documents under the name of Executive Trustee Services or under the name of ETS, well, that was not a legal entity in California. So how were they recording documents?
Well, they just send them to the recorder's office and they get recorded.
But you can't record it. You have to be a legal entity in order to record documents. You cannot be a non-entity. Casper the Friendly Ghost cannot go record documents.
Does the recorder actually check? I don't think the recorders check. They just take whatever is sent in, especially from these banks or these corporation-sounding companies, and just record them.
Exactly. They assume
Yeah.
it's correct. So what you have to do is you have to pull over your documents, and
Right.
then when you find out that they were recorded by a false entity,
Right.
you have to open up a criminal investigation at the sheriff's office for these false recorded documents. You have to sue the entity to cancel these false recorded documents, and then you have to report the recorded documents to the district attorney's office for real estate fraud. And then if you want to, you can also file a complaint with the Department of Corporations, the Department of Real Estate, and the Attorney General's office. So unless you do those 6 or 7 things, those documents will continue to be in the recorded documents office.
Exactly.
They're tripping people up. There's this whole, we have all these different places where you can record stuff. And so the 6 entities assume that somebody's doing their job, but nobody's doing their job.
Exactly. Everybody's cheating, too. I mean...
Exactly. So we need some sort of checklist where it says, okay, I found these wrong recorded documents. How do I report it? Well, you're not going to win your case, your civil case doing that, unless you're actually suing them for recording the wrong documents, the cancellation of these recorded documents. So that's what I'm doing now. Again, not giving legal advice. This is just what I've been doing. My husband's like, you're dangerous there. I'm not giving legal advice. This is just what I'm going through right now, because telling these people it's wrong.
And Karen, I've actually got on my foreclosure defense page on my website a little 1 or 2 live stream videos about analyzing the recorded documents. From what I have found, that people, and so I've been encouraging people for like months to go down to the recorder's office, I have a checklist, get these documents, look at these names. We've been actually collecting signatures from around the country for the same names, because they're using the same names for documents all over the place, and they're different signatures. And so as documents come into the office, I print them and then I will scan them and upload them. So I have a suspicious signatures page on my foreclosure HOFJ.org, under foreclosure defense. And people can look at that, and often they'll ask me, what about this name? What about that name? So a call goes out, and then boom, in comes some more documents for that name. Because it's just truly a horrific battle to try to get any kind of justice. Now, I'm going to actually have to go back and look, because I want to see if I have been duped with the MERS name. The Mortgage Electronic System, singular, and the Mortgage Electronic Systems, plural, because I believe everything I've seen, it's plural. And you're telling me that systems, plural, is not a legal California corporation, right? So everything MERS with systems plural did is illegal?
Yeah, what you do is look at the Delaware corporation and what the name
Yes.
of the Delaware corporation is.
Right.
And then look at what they did in California and see if some places they signed it one way and some places they signed it both ways. But there is only one legal spelling of it according to the Delaware Department of Corporations.
And that's the single tense. One.
And I believe it's a single.
Got it. I'll check it out. Okay, more work. Oh my goodness. So now you're taking on a battle to get the fraudulent, forged, fake documents rescinded, right?
That's where I'm currently in that battle right
Okay.
now. That's all part of the battle that I'm having right now. But at that point, I was still just fighting MERS and Bank of America. And MERS just went away. MERS never appeared. They just quietly went away. They don't want to bother with me. So
Right.
I'm still in Bank of America. But at this point, Bank of America assigns all of its rights to U.S. Bank. And they say, hey, we're out of it.
Right.
We gave it all to U.S. Bank.
Wow.
Those are great. Yeah, you have to know the history of Bank of America. What I said, when it first started, they were basically a bunch of loan collectors, loan sharks.
Yeah.
Loan to everybody, but everybody pays them back because of their loan shark ties.
Right.
The U.S. Bank was more of the strong arms. They're a bunch of bullets. That's what they are, cowards and bullets. They'll beat you up. Wells Fargo tracks you down.
Oh, golly, Karen, I love your descriptions. They're so true and accurate. And we really appreciate your advocacy on behalf of everybody, both as an example and as the efforts that you're putting forth in court, because not everybody has the resources, the time, the personality, the experience, the understanding, but we're all getting cheated without a doubt. So we so appreciate you coming on the show today. We'd really enjoy updates. So whenever anything occurs, can you just let me know so we can get you on an update show? I'd really appreciate that.
Oh, great. In fact, I'll be ready to come back whenever you want me to go through this story because I can talk for 2 hours. Seika had me on one day. I think I was on for an hour and 20 minutes, and then she had me on the next week because it really is. I've got a lot of twists and turns in there, and we haven't even gotten to the present day litigation. That one is a whole other show.
Oh boy. All right. We'll have you. Maybe you can share with us next week because the issues are constant. The pressure is there. The stress is there. The people need to know and take encouragement. I do get encouraging letters from watchers that say, oh my goodness, you've encouraged me to fight. And if that's the only thing I can do, if that's one thing I can do is to encourage people to stand up. You're not alone. And we're all going to try to fight back and keep buggering the bankers, the politicians, and the bureaucrats.
And CJ, just about one more thing. That we're not alone. Literally, up until I started a couple of months ago online. Even though I saw that millions of people were going through this, I still thought that I was the only one that was fighting.
Yeah.
And if you look at the people who are not just fighting, but the people who are fighting and winning
Yeah.
across America,
Yes.
and you just caption their cases, it would be as thick as the Bible. And the banks and the press are hiding that, and they're doing it by not publishing opinions and by settling cases.
Right.
So Pam Ragman getting a published opinion is huge because
Yes.
the banks are literally settling with people and dismissing cases so that the files never actually make it, so you don't get pressed.
Is there a way, Karen, that you can help collect that information so that we can make that available somehow? I've been
Probably
struggling
not.
to try. I've been struggling to get people.
If you go on my webpage, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not the
Yeah.
collator. I don't know
Yeah.
how to collect all that stuff.
I don't either. And this is the trouble, because if we could actually get this collected, so if you're watching, if you have any way you can help us collect this in a site, in a spot, so that everybody can start to take real heart and recognize that people are winning, because that's one of the demoralizations they're doing. They're keeping secret any of the giveaways or any of the settlements that they do, so that everyone else, they can steal everyone else's house. They'll give up. They're just trying to beat us down individually, and divided we fall. That is the answer.
I do have a Facebook page. It's giving people power, and I just post everything that I know. I post copies documents, what I'm
Thanks.
thinking, what I know. So I'm not posted all the time. And anybody's welcome to join. It's just I will block people if they're arrogant or insult me.
Absolutely. I don't need that too. I totally agree. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I do have
absolutely.
to go now.
Yep.
I look forward to coming back
Yep.
and telling the rest of the story.
Okay. We thank you so much for joining. Come on, guys. Don't give up. Don't give in. Never give up. Never give in. And bring along your family, friends, neighbors. And let's get all the other activists to join us in fighting back against the banksters, because it is all about the money and the banks. It starts right there. When they have unlimited quantities of money, they can do whatever they want. And there you go. We're in this lawlessness time. So thanks for following. Thanks for fighting back. We thank you for your support, and bring more into the fold. Come on, let's get us all together. See you tomorrow. Update Friday. Send me an update. Get on the show.
I was proud of me class, like my father and mother before me.
They taught me to fight for my civil rights.
But it's always the same old story.
The rich reign supreme while the poor can but dream.
Under Labour or Liberal or Tory.
And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians. Bugger the bureaucrats too. Bugger the buggers who make up the rules. And if you're one of them, bugger you. And if you're one of them, bugger you.
The system is bent and the money's all spent. We're badgered from every direction.
The workers get taxed while the wealthy relax.
With nary a moment's reflection.
When it's brass, there's muck.
And they don't give an ass, 'cause they're programmed against insurrection.
And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians. Bugger the bureaucrats too. Bugger the buggers who make up the rules. And if you're one of them, bugger you. And if you're one of them, bugger you.
Now all you good people with passion to vent, don't give up the struggle for justice. But I've done my time on the protesters' line, and these days I show my dissent.
By loitering